Imagine having one of the most advanced, fuel-efficient long-haul aircraft in the world offered to your fleet, and then walking away from it. That's exactly what American Airlines did with the Airbus A350. While carriers across Europe, Asia, and even the Middle East were praising the A350 as a game-changer, American Airlines turned its back on it, choosing instead to double down on Boeing. But why? Was it money, politics, loyalty, or something hidden in the fine print of operations? Today, we're digging into the fascinating story behind why America's largest airline hated the A350. When Airbus first launched the A350 program in the mid-2000s, it was pitched as the ultimate competitor to Boeing's long-haul dominance. The aircraft promised lower fuel consumption, modern composite materials, and a passenger experience that airlines could market as next generation. For many carriers, it was a no-brainer. Qatar Airways, Singapore Airlines, and Cathay Pacific quickly signed on, eager to modernize their fleets with a jet that combined efficiency and comfort. American Airlines entered the picture in 2005, back then through US Airways, which had placed an order for the A350 before its eventual merger with American. When the two airlines combined in 2013, American inherited this large order for Airbus's new flagship. On paper, it looked like a win. The A350 was set to replace older, fuel-hungry aircraft like the Boeing 767 and Airbus A330. It promised range, lower operating costs, and the prestige of flying the newest wide-body jet in the sky. But American Airlines had a complicated history with Airbus. Unlike United or Delta, which operated a balanced mix of Airbus and Boeing, American had historically leaned heavily toward Boeing. Its backbone was built on 737s, 757s, and 777s. Even though the airline operated some Airbus narrowbodies, wide-body strategy was deeply tied to Boeing. So, while the A350 order sat in the books, there was always a lingering question. Would American really commit to such a major shift in fleet philosophy? Meanwhile, Boeing was not sitting still. Around the same time, it was developing the 787 Dreamliner, a direct rival to the A350. American Airlines, keen on keeping its fleet strategy aligned, became one of Boeing's biggest Dreamliner customers. The airline ordered both the 787-8 and 787-9, aircraft that could fulfill similar missions as the A350, but with one big advantage: commonality. Pilots could transition between Boeing types more easily, maintenance crews could work with familiar systems, and suppliers already had strong relationships in place. The merger with US Airways had left American with an order book that was split between two philosophies: Airbus's bold new A350 and Boeing's pragmatic 787 program. Over the years, delays, shifting strategies, and financial calculations would slowly push American toward a decision. The writing was on the wall. American Airlines might not really want the A350 at all. So why exactly did American Airlines cool off on the Airbus A350? The answer lies in a mix of economics, logistics, and loyalty. First, the cost factor. While the A350 was efficient on paper, it wasn't cheap. Introducing a brand new aircraft type into the fleet required more than just paying for the jets. It meant retraining pilots, investing in new simulators, stocking different spare parts, and building new maintenance expertise. For an airline the size of American, these hidden costs could stretch into hundreds of millions of dollars. Boeing, on the other hand, offered an easier solution: the 787 Dreamliner, which slotted neatly into the airline's existing Boeing-heavy ecosystem. Second, fleet commonality. The 787 shared much of its operational philosophy with the 777s and 737s that American already flew. That meant easier crew scheduling, reduced training hours, and streamlined maintenance. Choosing the A350 would have disrupted that harmony. For a global carrier running tight schedules, consistency matters just as much as fuel burn savings. Third, there's the loyalty and politics factor. American Airlines is, after all, an American brand. While this doesn't mean they won't buy Airbus jets. After all, they fly plenty of A319s and A321s. It does mean there's a natural tilt towards supporting a domestic manufacturer when the choice is close. Boeing knows this, and likely offered American attractive financing terms and delivery slots to make the Dreamliner even more appealing. In the end, the A350 simply didn't fit. It may have been a technological marvel, but for American Airlines, the practicalities of fleet commonality, lower integration costs, and Boeing's aggressive deals made the decision almost inevitable. Boeing made sure the 787 was not just competitive, but irresistible. Reports suggest that Boeing offered American Airlines very favorable terms on Dreamliner purchases, including attractive financing, flexible delivery schedules, and the promise of long-term support. When combined with the cost savings of keeping the fleet more uniform, these incentives made Airbus's offer look less appealing. Then there's the political factor. In the US, buying Boeing jets isn't only seen as a business decision. It can also be spun as an act of patriotism. Airlines face subtle pressure to support domestic manufacturing, especially when taxpayer bailouts or government approvals might one day be needed. Choosing the A350 in large numbers could have drawn uncomfortable attention, while sticking with Boeing ensured goodwill in Washington and Seattle alike. Finally, the cultural element inside American Airlines mattered. Management teams and pilots were already familiar with Boeing's way of doing things. Introducing a European widebody at scale would have meant a shift not just in training, but in mindset. For an airline that values predictability, that kind of disruption often feels riskier than it looks on paper. So, while Airbus had built one of the world's most advanced aircraft, Boeing had something Airbus couldn't fully match: deep influence, national loyalty, and decades of embedded trust. Against that backdrop, the A350 never really stood a chance.
The decision to walk away from the Airbus A350 didn't just affect American Airlines, it rippled across the entire aviation market. Having American Airlines fly the A350 would have been a powerful endorsement in Boeing's home turf, helping Airbus gain credibility in the world's most competitive aviation market. Instead, the cancellation reinforced the perception that the US was still Boeing country. For American Airlines itself, the move tied its long-haul strategy firmly to the Boeing 787 Dreamliner. On the surface, this brought stability. The airline could simplify operations, reduce training costs, and negotiate better deals with Boeing by becoming one of its largest customers. But there were also trade-offs. The A350, with its larger capacity and longer range in some versions, could have opened up new ultra-long-haul routes or provided extra efficiency on high-demand international sectors. By sticking with Boeing, American limited some of its flexibility compared to global rivals like Qatar Airways or Singapore Airlines, which now operate both types. Competitively, the absence of the A350 in American's fleet meant that passengers flying across the Atlantic or Pacific sometimes compared experiences. While European and Asian airlines marketed the A350's quieter cabins, wider seats, and advanced air systems, Americans' passengers were flying on older 777s or waiting for more Dreamliners to arrive. In an industry where customer perception matters, that gap became noticeable. Still, the decision reflects the reality of airline economics. For American, standardization and cost control outweighed prestige. The airline sacrificed some passenger experience and potential range advantages, but it gained financial predictability and political alignment. In other words, rejecting the A350 was less about hate, and more about survival in a brutally competitive market. In the end, the story of American Airlines and the Airbus A350 is less about dislike for the aircraft itself and more about the realities of running a massive airline. The A350 is an engineering masterpiece, admired across the globe for its fuel efficiency, range, and passenger comfort. For American Airlines, the hidden costs of introducing a brand new type, the political and financial advantages of sticking with Boeing, and the importance of fleet commonality made it a deal that simply didn't make sense. It's a fascinating example of how airlines don't just choose planes based on performance charts. They choose based on strategy, politics, long-term economics, and even national identity. In another world, we might be seeing A350s in American Airlines colors flying from Dallas to Hong Kong or from Miami to Sao Paulo. Instead, the Dreamliner became the backbone of American's long-haul network, while the A350 became a what if in the airline's history. So the next time you see an American Airlines widebody parked at the gate, remember, the decision not to fly the A350 shaped not just its fleet, but its entire global strategy. If you enjoyed this deep dive into aviation history, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and check out our other stories about the aircraft shaping the skies today.